after Alex does the intro and kind of goes over what the topic is, aka like just retro movies, I guess.
The retro rewatch. You know how many times I had to practice that?
The retro rewatch?
Yes, exactly. Welcome back to another episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. Yep, see, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
Retro rewatch.
Retro rewatch.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
Welcome.
Take two, everybody.
Yeah.
Peter Piper.
Take two.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
Welcome back to another episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. I'm your host, the Salty Nerd, and today's episode we're doing a retro rewatch. We're going to be talking about 4 movies, a blast from the past, movies that we each individually picked, and
That are really old.
Are really old. Some are ancient, like mine, and we're going to have a blast talking about them. I am joined by my fantastic panel of nerds, starting with Mathew Kadish, author extraordinaire. What's up, Matt?
Not much.
That's it.
Okay.
I used to live in Hollywood. That's about all there is to it. And by the way, you can check me out on Twitter at MathewKadish.com if you find my witty banter interesting.
Too much.
Yeah.
Jude. And the always salty Jude, welcome to the show. What's up?
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And the barbarian himself, MattVader 74 on Twitter. What's up, man?
Not much, man. How are you, Boo?
You just start calling me Boo now?
I'm calling you Boo now.
Yeah, that's his new name for you.
This is a bad
my new pet name. For your sultry voice and your dreamy good looks.
Oh,
Tell me straight tripping, boo.
Stop it now. Okay, so here's the movies that we're going to be talking about. We each picked a special movie. I don't know. I picked mine out of a hat. I don't know how you guys picked yours.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you how you picked your movie because, oh my God.
Did you not?
Okay,
Did you lose a bet or something?
No, okay. I'll tell you. Okay, so my movie, I picked a 1960 film called The Angry Red Planet. Not to be confused with The Red Planet. That's a different movie. This is The Angry.
Better movie.
Yeah.
The Angry Red Planet.
It's got Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer in it.
This is not that movie.
This is not that movie.
Not that movie. This is a movie with none of the actors. I don't know any of their names.
And it took a while to find.
Yeah, okay, so this is what I did. I looked for old movies, old monster movies. I was like, I'm going to pick like an old retro, like Godzilla type thing. And then I saw like it was Land of the Dinosaurs, black and white, old school, cool movie. And I was like, if I pick a dinosaur movie, these guys are going to murder me in my sleep.
I literally thought that you saw an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 with this movie in it and just said, let's just watch this without any of the humor.
I'm pretty sure that they've watched this show on Mystery Science Theater 3000, right?
They probably have. I mean, I don't know.
If not, we should send an email.
And Matt, Kadish, why don't you tell me what you picked, and we'll go around the table, and then we'll start with mine.
Well, I picked the seminal 1989 buddy cop movie Tango and Cash, starring Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic choice, by the way. This was so quintessentially
I think it was everyone's favorite.
80s, just over-the-top nonsense. We'll talk about it in a minute. Jude, what did you pick? I think your movie might have been my favorite one. Go ahead.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm serious.
that hit me right in my heart. So I've talked about this movie on the podcast before. It's my all-time favorite sci-fi movie. One of my favorite B movies. It's called Night of the Comet. It's from 1984, starring Catherine Mary Stewart and Kelly Maroney.
And Chakotay.
And Chakotay.
That freaked me out.
You're secretly a Star Trek fan.
2 80s scream queens. Mm-hmm. And it's about Halley's Comet comes and it wipes out the planet and only a few people survive.
Yeah. By dehydration, which was my favorite part. Like the zombies weren't just zombies, they were just really dehydrated
Save it
people.
for the pod.
They turned into calcium dust.
Calcium dust.
Getting dusty.
It's amazing.
All that calcium dust.
What about you, Barbarian? What did you pick?
Why am I a barbarian?
Because you love
he's
Conan.
Boo and the Barbarian. Perfect sidekick.
Oh my god, we're gonna get you guys Huddles t-shirts.
The Barbarian and Boo. That's good. I like it.
It's like a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon. What movie did you pick?
What did I pick? I picked the 1981 John Carpenter classic, Escape from New York. Kurt Russell.
Yes.
Awesomeness.
Everybody loves this.
I've had that movie in my brain since we talked about apocalypse movies.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not really an apocalypse movies, but it's a good dystopian
yeah.
future
Sure it is.
Yeah, it's dystopian.
And, it was another one of those movies I watched when I was 11, 12, and I loved it.
It's also part of like the golden era of
Yeah.
Kurt Russell films.
Oh, yeah.
And I
He's at his
still love
height.
it. I still love it. And it was a good rewatch, and I'm glad I picked it.
Right on.
So,
Yeah, we had 2 really good Kurt Russell movies this
Yeah,
go
I thought
around.
that was
Yeah.
kind of odd that we got 2 Kurt Russell
We
movies in
should
there.
do a Kurt Russell
I'm down.
pod.
I picked this one.
Death Proof.
Death Proof, 100%. Okay, so let's talk about my movie.
If you're only listening and you don't know what Alex was pointing at, is a Death Proof poster.
We're not
on the
on. We're
wall.
not on video right now.
Yeah, take a picture of that. Put it on the picture of it.
Yeah. Okay. Let me take a sip of my beer, and then we're going to talk about the Angry Red Planet.
Ugh, okay.
You guys are such dicks.
You're not allowed to big movies.
You're the one who picked this movie. God damn it!
All right, my movie.
Like I literally turned to Jude. I was like, "Is he serious?
Yes.
Does he really want us to
I
watch
was
this?"
like, is this the right one?
Yeah,
I wanna-
did we anger Alex in some way?
I want to broaden my horizon. I want to watch movies that I've never even heard of
Every
before.
single time you ask us to watch something, it's a ball of shit.
This was not a ball of shit.
big turd sandwich.
This had an important message to the human race.
That aliens are assholes.
And that women,
Because that was the end message.
no
basically.
matter what your profession is, if you're a woman, you ought to be serving food.
Yeah.
I know we're getting to the end
Okay,
here.
yeah, we're getting to the end.
But the whole
This was-
attention, citizens of Earth. If
Thank
you
God those
choose to come to
aliens
this
spoke
planet, we will destroy you. We've been watching you since you crawled out of the oceans as an amoeba of slime.
Oh my God, he memorized
Yeah,
all
like,
the
that's word for word what they say at the end.
It's like, whatever. It's terrible.
Oh man,
But
it was so
Zendaya
good.
was in it.
No, that would have made it good.
There should be a remake with Zendaya. She could play the curvy astronaut.
That's what we should do at the end of the pod. We should go through who we would recast it if we did a reboot. Yeah.
Ugh, retro reboots.
Sorry, didn't mean to derail you.
Anyway,
you're
Alex,
fine.
Please carry on.
what is Angry Red Planet about?
It's not. It doesn't matter. It was a goofy '60s sci-fi movie. I did like I did find a couple of not callbacks. That's the opposite. What's the opposite of a callback?
Back call.
No, it's
A current event?
it was like it was like a foreshadowing for movies that we do love. And it was kind of
Inspiration.
inspiration. There was some inspiration. I felt like maybe for like the Alien franchise. I got some Ripley.
No,
vibes.
none of them
No,
saw
I
this
did.
movie.
No, I did because when they were out in the
You're
planet,
reading way too much into it.
I'm trying so hard.
The only thing that it has in common was that it was aliens.
And the female lead, okay, arguably she was the lead. She rescued everybody. She was the only one that like knew what happened.
She
and
better get her ass in the kitchen.
the whole movie revolved around the female astronaut, which I thought was very progressive for 1960.
It kind of was.
And she was arguably one of the smarter ones on the crew. She was the one who figured
All
out
right,
how to
so-
get off the planet.
we got to set the stage out.
Okay, sorry.
Nobody's going to know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
Angry Red Planet is about 4 astronauts that are the first people ever to make it to Mars on a spaceship, which looks kind of like a SpaceX spaceship from Elon Musk.
It even lands the same way.
It even lands the same way, which again, some current day oh, hey, look at that. That came true. In the 1960s, that was sci-fi.
No,
Now
it
today,
was just
it's
literally
happening.
they had stock footage of a rocket taking off and they just reversed it because this movie was made for like $200,000
And in 9 days.
In 9
in
days.
9 days.
9 times.
So anyway, they get to
sorry.
Mars.
Anyway, they get to Mars and they realize that there's a bunch of crazy. There's like a whole city there, and there's a giant bat, monkey, squid, spider thing that tries to eat them.
We called it a spider mouse.
Yeah.
It's bat, mouse, spider crab.
Okay.
Bat mouse spider crab.
Bat, mouse, spider crab.
Bat mouse spider crab.
Okay.
Obviously.
Yes.
Everyone's heard of that.
And I mean, at that time that was some pretty cutting edge stuff.
I mean, it was terrifying in
It was.
1960.
My kid was mesmerized watching it.
Oh, God. You let your
Hilarious.
kid
Yes,
watch
I did. And the other thing they did was that they advertised this movie as being some like magical achievement of cinema because they had this new movie magic, or what was it called? Something.
It was called Cinema
Magic. Something magic.
Cinemagic.
Yeah, Cinemagic.
Well, Cinemagic, the process was basically it was a way to combine animation with live action stuff back before like any of this stuff was even possible, and it didn't work. And in order to save the movie, they actually had to do like a double exposure technique to give it like this weird trippy look.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like it was just going to look like even more fake than it already did.
Some of the interviews after the movie came out with the director and producers were like,
You watched interviews?
I did. They were like, this movie did not come out the way we wanted it to. Like, this is awful. It came out with so much worse than we expected. Snort. She got the snort. Yeah, they were like, this movie is not something that we're proud of. The technology that we tried using didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. Visually on screen, we were like, this looks like garbage. So they just kind of salvaged what they could out of it. They filmed the movie in 9 days with $200,000 budget. It was just
and that budget got slashed midway through, and they already had spent like a fourth of it on the Cinemagic process.
Oh my god.
This is just a failure across the board.
Like there was literally a part when Jude and I were watching the movie where a character is like looking up in the spaceship, and I was like, he's not going to go up there because they couldn't afford a second set for the spaceship.
Yeah, that's true. Everything took place basically on one set as far as like the spaceship was concerned, where the control panels and all that stuff, and then the second set was just outside with some like fake palm trees.
Well,
and
didn't they have a
rubber monsters
pantry so the woman could go get their Mars rations?
And make sandwiches.
Yeah, make sandwiches.
Like, hey, woman scientist, go get us some food.
The 19
She's like, they're like, Dr. Sweetheart, Dr. Dollface.
Oh,
why
yeah,
don't you
Dollface?
why don't you whip me up a sandwich, Dr. Dollface?
The latent misogyny in this movie is
so priceless.
Great.
I mean, it's the one redeeming factor of this movie. Because it was just so entertaining.
We gotta get you a different outfit.
Yeah.
We can't see your curves.
Hold on. That was my favorite one. They
I'm
were like,
sure it was.
they were like, I can't remember the poor lady's name in the movie.
Irish.
Irish? Oh, that's right.
Iris.
Yeah, Irish.
Iris.
No. Her name was Iris.
Yeah, he called her
kept
Irish.
calling her Irish because she was a redhead.
Yeah.
What was I talking about? Oh, yeah, the just 1960s, like, low-key, not even low-key, just blatant misogyny.
Yeah, no, it was
my favorite
Yeah, it
part
was
of the
just
movie.
like, it was a different time.
Yeah,
right?
it was.
Oh, things were different back then.
And the captain always had his
His
thing
shirt
open.
off. Yeah, his
Oh
shirt
my
off.
god,
his
the
shirt with the chest hair.
DVD on the
Chest hair,
lead
yeah.
astronaut's suit.
Yes.
But
All that chest
it
hair.
was
the
funny.
high pants with the belt above the belly button.
Yeah.
Boom.
It was
Bring
funny
it on,
'cause-
Grandpa.
It was funny because the crew, so it was 3 men and 1 woman. And
Yep.
all the men except for the professor hit on this woman shamelessly. And just, just... And it was funny when she would react to it.
Compliment.
Yeah, like the one guy would put his hands on her shoulders and it was really awkward and he'd be like, oh, the moon's so romantic tonight. And she'd be like, ha, 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 ha.
It's like, it was so weird.
Like do the hair flip thing.
Yeah. But my favorite thing was that, I mean, it was so funny and blatantly obvious.
There was this line where they were getting ready to go out onto
Yeah,
the surface of Mars for the first time, and she's got her spacesuit on, and one of the guys, I think he was the pilot, he's like,
what'd you put that on for? It hides all your wonderful curves.
yeah, all your feminine
I'm
curves
about to go walk out on a planet.
in high heels, no less.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie is, oh my God. All right. Jude, why don't you give me your perspective on this movie? What did you think of it when you watched it?
Okay. Well, I thought, really? Through a lot of it. But honestly, it was hilarious. I don't think it intended to be hilarious,
No,
but
definitely not.
it definitely was. Like all of the special effects were just so bad that you can't not appreciate it.
Yeah.
And the mouse bat or mouse
Bat crab.
Yeah. Mouse bat crab.
Bat rat spider crab.
Rat spider crab. Yeah. That was something that will probably make appearances in my dreams from now on.
Nice. What did you think about the blob? The big green gooey blob that just kind of came out.
For a while, when that giant plant attacked,
The vagina plant.
yeah, we thought it was going to be a planet of like
Carnivorous plants.
Carnivorous plants. We kept calling them sex plants because it looked like the plant was trying to like make love.
With its tentacles.
It was just like
Yeah, so it was like the planet was like a Venus flytraps, but it looked like a vagina with
Yeah.
tentacles.
And I was like, oh shit, I figured it out. Sex plants. It's a planet full of sex plants. And then I was like, oh man, there's no sex plants on this planet.
No.
So I was a little disappointed.
Didn't it have teeth?
The whole lake, though.
Yeah, well, it was the ocean.
It was
man.
as big as this table we're sitting at.
They're like rowing across Lake Michigan in this little dinghy raft that they brought.
Yeah, they brought along an inflatable raft to Mars.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
And what did they say? They said something about the water. Like, the water's heavier here.
Yeah,
It must
heavy
be
water.
It was like
be
oil.
mineral rich. And they inflated a raft with a couple paddles.
And the reveal of the futuristic city,
man.
where it's like, what, you couldn't see that from the shore?
Yeah.
The thing's gigantic.
Or like
Giants.
from outer space.
Yeah.
I never got closure on that city either.
Like there's
No, they did not. It just kind of showed up and then it
Wasn't
disappeared.
in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're rowing to the World Trade Center that you can see from 100 miles away.
And they
And they're never going to get the chance again because they're not allowed to come back.
They're not allowed to go back to Mars.
So let's get this over with and talk about the ending, the whole message. Like, I went down a rabbit hole the other day and I started looking into conspiracy theories about the 60s and 70s about film and the CIA and how much they used that as propaganda to kind of like paint the CIA as the good guys and to trick everybody because they're a bunch of assholes. And I was looking at this movie through that lens for a while and I was like, wow, this is really weird because it's so obviously like, yay, science, let's get in our rocket ship and go explore the good old American way. And then when they get home and this message from the space aliens is like, don't ever come back here again. And I'm like, what does it mean? Why have we never gone back to the moon?
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the fake moon landing stuff and like how we're never going to go back there again. And it's just, it felt like a weird.
I wish we would get there for the first time.
Damn.
Hey, Andre wanted us to do a conspiracy theory podcast. This could be the good start.
If we don't get there before I die, I'm going to be really upset.
To Mars or the moon?
To Mars.
Oh, okay.
I thought you were talking about the moon.
I did too.
He's like, I really like to.
Listen, man, I know I'm the oldest one at the table, but when I was a kid, I thought by now we would at least have like domed moon bases and stuff and have like some cool stuff going on back and forth between us and the moon.
We're
Back in
working on it.
childhood.
And
Sci-fi.
I'm like a huge
Like
I'm a huge NASA nerd, man, and I love that stuff. I want to see somebody step foot on Mars. I really do, and if I don't make it there, I'm going to be really upset.
In high heels. Step foot on.
Oh, definitely.
And
Yeah.
make sure that the spacesuit is form-sitting.
Yeah, form-fitting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hide the curves.
Exactly.
You go
And if
find,
she's not wearing lipstick,
That's the
we need
biggest
someone else to do
takeaway.
it.
That's the biggest takeaway from this movie is don't hide the curves, people. Never hide the curves.
I wanted to ask
And you know what? That goes out to you men too. Don't hide your curves.
I wanted to, or our chest hair. Alex, I wanted to ask you, what was that rifle they were using?
yeah.
Oh, the sonic
that?
boom rifle. So it was all just based off acoustics. And it wasn't any kind of physical damage. It wasn't like a laser gun or anything like that. It was all acoustic sound wave, like
Because
ear piercing.
it's cheaper to do the sound effect
Exactly.
than it is to
But
do the
here's
special
the thing.
effect.
Exactly.
don't really mock that.
It's a real thing.
That's a real thing now.
Yeah.
And it messes you up.
That was his boomstick.
They also
It's a crowd control thing that they have.
That,
They're
yeah.
mounted on top of trucks.
It made the bat rat spider crab's eyes bleed.
yes.
Yeah.
It made him go blind, I think.
Yeah,
Something.
Funny enough, so the bat rat spider crab,
Yes.
it's on the cover of the Misfits "Walk Amongst Us" album.
Ooh.
Like,
It
like
kinda
they
seems
actually
like-
use that as like their
You know what
their
else?
cover art.
Misfits.
Just when you brought that up, it kind of reminds me of the Demogorgon God thing from Stranger Things 3 and 4.
The bat rat spider crab was designed and operated by renowned marionette artist Bob Baker.
Oh, boy.
He was like a big time special effects guy in the 60s.
See, there's some clout to this movie. All right, enough about this ridiculous.
Well, now we know what they spent their money on.
We need to make like a game, like a paper rock scissors game. Call it Bat Rat Spider Crab. And we'll figure that out later.
Okay, that's post.
Do you think that they
Post-podcast.
paid all of their actors equally, or do you think the female lead who saved everyone got paid significantly
Yeah,
less?
she definitely didn't get as much
Yeah,
as
she
she
No, no,
definitely
no,
didn't
no.
get as much. The guy with the chest hair got paid the most.
Oh, yeah. Well, he showed the most chest hair.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
In 1961, she probably made like $12.50.
Yeah.
I need about $350.
Yeah.
But it was funny because she like all the men died basically, and the captain got infected by this like alien goo,
Yeah.
and she was the one who basically got them back to the ship and
Space
got it
Space Goon.
you know, going
That's what I'm
back
saying.
to
Like
Earth.
Ripley, I'm telling you, man, Sigourney Weaver. This is a
She was
precursor.
not Ripley. Like her character was constantly the one who needed to be saved.
Well, that
She
was
was an
1960s.
hysterical woman.
So
She
what
was a
saying?
hysterical woman.
Yes.
Like she actually had a line
They
where she was like, "Forgive me for
actually
being
said-
a hysterical
Oh yeah. Oh
woman."
my God, that was so weird.
He's been saying it to me all week.
Forgive me for being female and scared.
Yes.
Like what?
I just love the parts where
You're
they're
forgiven.
they're sitting around the ship and they're like, "Hey, Irish, why don't you go make me a sandwich?"
Legit.
And
She's like, "Oh my God, are you hungry? Okay."
This movie, if you haven't already watched it, this movie is available on Amazon Prime.
Don't watch it.
Just
it's stupid.
it's a blast from the past, man.
Like it's literally like there was one point where they were doing like a 3-shot of these guys talking, and they would cut to a close-up of each individual as they were talking. And I told Jude, I was like, look at the background. And it was the same background for each. Like
They were standing in exactly the same spot.
as they would like cut between, like the background wouldn't change, but the person would. And it was just like, that's tantamount Mystery Science Theater 3000 style bad movie.
You guys
there.
are all better for watching that movie. I'm just going to put that out there. And speaking of ridiculous movies, let's talk about Tango and Cash. Matt, why don't you tell us about your movie you picked?
This is one of my all-time favorite guilty pleasure movies because it's peak 80s Stallone and Kurt Russell mashed together, which is fantastic. And you always know that when a movie starts with Sylvester Stallone saying Rambo is a pussy, it's something special because that type of meta just doesn't happen all that often. But basically, it's about these two Los Angeles narcotics detectives, Ray Tango, played by Sylvester Stallone, and Gabriel Cash, played by Kurt Russell. And basically, they're both like super cops, and they operate in different parts of the city, and they have this kind of rivalry going over who can be like the best cop. And Sylvester Stallone's Tango is like this, like very kind of upright, wears a suit,
Glasses.
like
Stock market guy,
glasses. He's kind of like an egghead. And Cash is kind of like the loose cannon, like t-shirt and jeans type guy. And they don't know it, but they've been systematically taking on this crime lord's drug operation. And the crime lord, his name's Parrot. He hatches this plan to frame Tango and Cash for the murder of a federal agent and get them thrown in jail so that he can like slowly torture them and punish them for, costing him billions of dollars in lost drug revenue. And then Tango and Cash basically have to put aside their differences and team up to find out who this guy is and how to stop him and how to get their lives back. And it's peak 1980s buddy cop shenanigans.
So over the
When
top.
did this come out? 89?
It was the last movie of 1989 because it came out in December. And so I just want to give you guys some interesting factoids about this to set the stage before we talk about it. This movie was produced by John Peters and Peter Gruber, who I don't know if you guys have heard of these people before.
Any relation to Hans Gruber?
No, unfortunately.
Uninterested.
But they were like the big super producers of the 1980s. They did like Batman. That was like their big
Tim Burton Batman?
The Tim Burton Batman, yeah. That was their first big one. And they eventually became the heads of Sony Studios. And they almost destroyed that studio with their stupidity. It cost them like $3.2 billion in revenue before they got fired. And to give you some idea, John Peters, the guy who was really behind Tango and Cash, he used to be Barbra Streisand's hairdresser. And he leveraged that relationship with Streisand into getting producing credits. And he eventually became like a super producer, I think mostly because of his association with Peter Gruber, because John Peters is well known for having like terrible ideas. And there was a time in the 90s when he had optioned Superman. He was trying to get a Superman movie made. He had hired Kevin Smith to write it. And he insisted that Kevin Smith put in giant spiders and gay robots.
Yes, I heard about that.
He was like, "Can you make the robots gay?" And then Kevin Smith was like, "Gay robot? Yeah, okay."
Kevin Smith has a fantastic speech about that very subject. It's so funny. If you guys have a chance, check it out on YouTube.
So basically, John Peters is a well-known hack who just kind of lucked into making all these like successful movies. And he wanted to make his version of Lethal Weapon, which was what Tango and Cash was meant
Felt
to
very
be.
much like that.
Yeah. And this movie was interesting because it was just you wouldn't know it because it turned out pretty good, but it was just such a mess. They had like 5 different directors come in. Wow. They started shooting without a completed script. This movie, even though it was credited as being written by another screenwriter, it was actually written by Sylvester Stallone because he would rewrite the movie on set every day. So basically, like when you're listening to this dialogue in this movie, that's all Sylvester Stallone, just creating it.
That makes so much sense.
And so the original director of photography of the movie was going to be Barry Sonnenfeld, who was the director of Men in Black.
Okay.
And he was Tim Burton's favorite cinematographer. And Sylvester Stallone hated him so much, he fired him like the day they started filming. He was just like, "Oh, get this Barry guy out of here." You know?
Is that your best Sylvester?
No,
hey, you're fired.
Hey,
I can't do it either.
I can only do Rocky.
And,
that's we'll talk about it. Go on.
Yeah, the funny thing about this movie though was originally the character of Cash was going to be played by Patrick Swayze.
Okay.
And when Patrick Swayze saw like how big of a mess that this movie was in terms of its production, he backed out and went and did Roadhouse instead.
Oh, such
Fantastic
a good choice.
movie.
And that's when they cast Kurt Russell to come in.
2 good choices were made that day.
And the reason Kurt Russell accepted the role, get this. So basically, the role of Martin Riggs in Lethal Weapon was originally offered to Kurt Russell, and he turned it down. And he was like, man, I shouldn't have turned down that role because it ended up being a big hit. So when this came along, he's like, yes, I'm going to do this. And he played Cash exactly how he would have played Martin Riggs in Lethal Weapon.
They're the same character.
Yeah. Like they've even got that obnoxious like laser scope on their 357 weapons and stuff.
That thing was so ridiculous.
Yeah. And also a fun fact is that, the Tango and Cash mobile.
You're giving it away. You're giving away the best part.
Well, they used the same sound effect for Luke Skywalker's land speeder for that vehicle.
I hear it now.
I thought
thinking about it.
Yeah, I thought that was a fun little connection.
That's a nice little Star Wars connection.
But this movie, I only ever saw it on broadcast TV when I was growing up, and so like it was very choppy and like they cut out all the swear words and stuff.
All the tits.
But I loved
There's
this
a lot
movie.
of tits in this movie. You didn't see them? Oh my god, dude.
Oh, I guess there was some.
Yeah.
They're not up to Vader's.
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah, they're not. What was it? Palin standards.
I watch a lot of porn.
Nail and Palin.
Palin standards. One of my favorite scenes in the movie, though, is the Dykes on Bikes scene.
Oh yeah, that's
Yes.
good.
Oh,
there's a scene where Terry Hatcher, who plays Sylvester Stallone's sister, like she works at a dance club.
She was really smoking hot.
Yeah,
back then.
Yeah,
Well, she's still pretty
I
good.
kind of
Still
forgot. Yeah.
Like she comes out of the club in like a biker's outfit, and you think like, oh, it's Kurt Russell trying to like sneak out of this club while the feds are screening people outside. And there's this like really sexist police officer who like kind of starts accosting her, and she gets on her bike, and then Kurt Russell comes out, and his disguise is he's completely in drag. He's dressed as a woman, but it's like Kurt Russell's like muscular top body.
yeah.
His chiseled
Yeah.
jaw.
Yeah, with a couple days growth on his face.
And the cop is like, hey, sweetheart, what are you, an aerobics instructor? and Terry Hatcher. Yeah, she's like, hey, get away from my property. And like Kurt Russell like
Which
gets
is
on the
also
back of her bike.
sexist.
Yeah. Kurt Russell gets on the back of her bike.
Or is it transphobic?
And the
It's not okay, whatever it is.
okay. Get that out of the way.
cop is like, hey, ladies, what's the chance of getting a threesome?
Oh my god, it was
Because that's
so
how you go.
obnoxious.
Yeah, that's how that
And
happens.
Kurt Russell literally flicks his cigarette into the guy's face. And like the entire time we're watching this scene, Jude and I are just cracking up.
Yeah.
It was probably the best scene in the whole movie.
Amazing.
So any movie where Sylvester Stallone calls Rambo a pussy and Kurt Russell appears in drag, you know is a special film.
All right, Jude, what are your thoughts? We're gonna go around the table. I'll go last because I've got some words for Kadish over here. What is your thoughts on this movie?
I love 80s movies, so it falls into the category of awesomely bad for me. Yeah, I thought it was
Awesomely bad.
It was a good rompy little cop flick. I mean, it didn't blow my mind. I don't think it was supposed to, but everything I wanted to get out of it, I did. It was 80s. It was terrible. Kurt Russell, I love. I'll watch anything with Kurt Russell in it.
What'd you think of the shower scene?
Oh man, Don't drop the soap. Hey, what are you doing? Don't flatter yourself.
They started going back and forth with dick jokes against each other.
Yeah.
Like, your dick's smaller than mine. No, your dick's smaller than mine.
Yeah, typical 80s humor from Sylvester Stallone, no doubt.
That was definitely written
I
by...
don't really have anything thought-provoking to add to this, but
It's such a
it is what it
brain-dead
is.
movie.
I
Yeah.
don't think that there is anything amazing that I could say that would blow your mind.
The 80s was the best decade.
It really was.
What did you think about
No
this
one had to
movie?
think, and you could just walk into a place and take a woman.
Yeah.
That's it.
You're good.
It's the
You
best.
would have
It was
a
the
club.
best
So
of times.
is it better or worse than the 1960s astronaut stuff?
Oh, way better.
The 80s had better hair.
Yeah, I can't argue with
Aquanet,
that.
toxic masculinity.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Go to hell, Ozone.
What about you, Vader? You got any thoughts about this movie?
You know, the stuff that was bad was really bad, like the whole last 30 minutes of the movie. And the stuff that was good was really good, man. It was I sat there and watched it with my wife and we completely enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I had a great time with this movie until the last 30 minutes. But my favorite part of this movie is I'm watching this movie and I'm realizing that every cool actor that ever existed in the 1980s is in this movie.
Yeah.
It really, really are.
Yeah.
And, you know, from the police precinct captains to the bad guys in this movie are great.
Oh, my God.
Jack Palance playing the same character he played in Batman, right? The Asian Chinese restaurant guy from Seinfeld.
And Jack Palance
Seinfeld?
has a strange obsession with ice.
Yeah.
The captain was actually in my movie.
Yes, I was going
Yes.
to talk about that. He's also in another Mel Gibson movie I wanted to bring up.
Gold Dukat from DS9
Yeah.
is in this movie. Marco Lamo, great bad guy. I love him. And the bald guy, or the guy,
Ponytail guy?
Ponytail guy.
The worst British accent
he was
ever to be graced
fantastic.
on film.
fantastic in this movie.
That's also what was
Don't they actually call him Ponytail?
They
Zadar?
do make fun of him.
I forget his name.
What's his name? Zadar, the guy with the jaw.
Oh, yeah.
yes.
They made so many jokes about that guy's face.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he was. That's
You broke that guy's jaw?
that face and jaw of his was that guy's career. He made a career out of being a bad guy and movies like
He
that.
was also in Samurai Cop and
Oh, my God.
a
Samurai Cop.
bunch of those like really low budget action movies.
That's a Sunday Fun Day movie.
I hadn't seen a movie with that guy in it in a long time, and it's like, holy crap! I remember this dude from
Yep.
lots of things, and he plays the exact same role in every film he's ever been in. So yeah,
I'm going to put it on the table right now. We have to do a podcast about Samurai Cop.
Sunday Fun Day Samurai Cop?
No.
How awful movie. That's the worst movie ever made.
No.
It's gotta be.
I don't even know what that
It
is.
might be Hard Ticket to Hawaii might be worse. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Whoa.
You think it's worse than The Room?
Yeah. Yes. Go watch. Okay, it's on YouTube. You can watch the whole thing on YouTube.
Okay.
It's called Hard Ticket to Hawaii.
Okay.
It's by far the
No,
worst.
I meant you think Samurai Cop is worse than The Room.
I'm leaning that way.
You know what's better than The Room?
Tango and Cash.
Tango and Cash.
Yeah.
Tango and Cash is definitely better than all three of those movies. All right, my turn. What the? Matt Kadish, what the hell was this movie?
Oh, you're one to talk, Mr. Angry Red Planet.
You got no pulpits to stand on.
yeah.
Claire.
I purposely picked a bad movie. He's like, I love this movie. It's fantastic. I just watched this.
It
Okay,
is
so it
fantastic.
starts out. We get to see
This movie is
Sylvester
everything
Stallone.
Kadish thinks that he is.
She's not
Sylvester
He's like,
Stallone.
yeah, I'm an egghead and a badass.
Get to see Sylvester Stallone race a tanker truck down a highway, a barren highway in the middle of nowhere. He pulls in front of it. He stops. He pulls out his .38 snub nose,
the tiniest gun possible.
the smallest gun he could hold, and he shoots this freaking truck from like a mile away, blows out the freaking windshield. The guy's okay. This is the greatest thing too. The truck's going like barreling down this highway like 80 miles an hour. The bullet somehow stops the truck because the guy panics and hits the brake, but then the guys, because they hit the brake, the driver and the passenger,
Robert Zadar,
fly out of the truck.
Clearly, the bullets shattered the glass to the point to where if they went through it, it would easily
break their fall.
through.
Do you not know how cars work?
Of course not.
Do you know
Physics,
nothing?
man.
Come on, man.
And they both fall out, and then the truck just stops.
Because he pushed the brake.
They pushed the brake,
And that's what made them fall out.
The
Did they
truck
put it in
saw
park, too?
Stallone
It's called centrifugal force.
standing there.
centrifugal force.
It's called physics, Alex.
That's not what that's called.
Deductive reasoning.
That's inertia, and it doesn't work like that.
Centrifugal force.
Anyway, so
Gravitational pull.
That's right.
right away to what? Stallone's
Just gonna
face.
say science words.
Science. Call Neil deGrasse Tyson.
The moon's gravitational pull.
Anyway, so that kind of
Don't
set
think
me
about
up.
it
I was
anymore. Do
watching
you want a
it.
sandwich?
I've never seen this movie before, and I was like, okay, this is where it's gonna go. It's already like that type of ridiculous. And then it got pretty good for a little while when it was like setting up the double cross and the whole plot line with the drug dealer trying to throw the guys in some kind of conspiracy.
How about that court scene?
The court scene. And then Cash's little speech in the courtroom where he just stood up and just obliterates the court, and the judges and the cops are all like rooting for him, like, yeah, this is a farce.
And his lawyer's like, oh, what have you done?
That was his Riggs moment.
Yes, that was definitely Riggs' moment. Okay, so the moment that this movie kind of like really solidified itself in just the absolute 80s ridiculousness is when they're in the prison. And it starts out like a normal prison. They're getting harassed by the people that they most likely put in prison to begin with. They're cops in a bad spot. They're going to get messed with and harassed and possibly killed, right? It all makes sense. I was like, okay, this is cool. And then it takes like a hard Lord of the Flies turn. They end up in some boiler room basement where everything's wet. There's like rain coming out of the ceiling for some reason.
You forgot the moment with Clint Howard and the Slinky.
Oh, yeah.
Beyonce.
And they...
and Cash's cellmate who doesn't let him use the toilet.
That's my toilet.
and Cash is about to, turn and face the guy to tell him off, and he's like this giant black man, and he's like, yeah, that's your toilet.
That's your toilet. That's absolutely... Let's get one thing straight. That is absolutely your toilet. I'll go poop somewhere else. But they went down to the basement of this jailhouse, and like every single inmate in this place is there, and some kind of like organized riot thing where they're hanging
you also
up
forgot
chains.
when they were bringing them into the jail, the whole place was on fire.
Oh yeah, there was the whole place was
like
in
the
flames.
worst jail ever.
It's like, what is going
What is
on?
going
Well, it's because the
on?
entire jail was on the payroll of Jack Palance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like Arkham Asylum for
right.
Tango and Cash.
Yeah, except for the assistant warden, apparently. That guy was cool.
Everybody. It was fantastic.
It was a whack, and then I'm pretty sure they would have died because they got electrocuted. They were hanging from chains.
It was a big Deus Ex Machina.
It reminded me very much of that scene from that C show that we used to watch where they were dangling from chains.
They were only electrocuted for like 5 seconds.
Yeah, with like 240 volt freaking
But
things.
that was actually taken from Lethal Weapon, because that's how they were torturing Riggs, remember?
Oh yeah, they did. It was like a go-kart battery though when they did it. And this one they were
When they slide down the electrical wire with their bare hands, and they're like, if it passes through you, it's okay, as long as you're not standing on ground. I'm like, that's not how electricity works.
But Sylvester Stallone is like, is that correct? And Kurt Russell's like, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that moment was written. That was the table read for the thing. And some background character was like, is that how electricity works? And Stallone's like, I don't know. Let's just put it in the movie.
We got to get him out of the prison
That's
somehow.
a great line.
I'm thinking no.
Then they got to fall 5 stories off the zip line.
And then
But they're fine.
It came back.
big deal.
It came back to
They're
reality.
super cops.
They are definitely super cops. I think Kurt Russell gets shot twice. Very obviously does not have a bulletproof vest on, but then later on, they're like, how'd you survive getting shot? And he's like, oh, I took it to the vest.
He's related to Spencer for Hire, or Spencer Confidential.
Yeah, exactly.
I could take a machete.
I could take a machete to the gut. No big deal.
Call back to our last episode. Watch it.
Yeah, go watch
listen
Spencer
to it,
Confidential.
read it,
What did I say?
whatever.
Oh, Mark Wahlberg is basically Batman. Yeah, that episode. Okay, so then it kind of comes back to the reality. We get a little bit more plot line. We get the very much Lethal Weapon-esque, like, drug dealer taking down the bad guys thing. And I was like, all right, I got into the movie again. And then,
The Odd Couple.
and then we got to my favorite part of the movie.
The sister?
The monster truck.
The monster.
The monster truck, right? So they go to this guy, he's basically Q from James Bond, and they're like, hey, what do you got for us, man? And he's like, take a look at this fantastic minivan with a gun on the side of it.
The Gatling gun.
And also, look at my dog with a gun in its mouth.
It's like, it was a stuffed animal.
Yeah, that was when I got lost in this movie.
It's like, oh, man.
You know that was like a John Peters thing.
They
like,
went-
Can we have a stuffed dog with a gun in
With
its
a
mouth?"
gun and then have it blow up.
They're just going to drive through the streets of LA with a Gatling gun mounted on a minivan.
It was the 80s. People did that.
You could do whatever you wanted in the
They
80s.
spent a solid like 10 minutes just driving around this abandoned mine with hundreds of bad guys with AKs.
Motorcycles, and
Motorcycles,
go-karts,
go-karts,
dirt movers.
dirt movers that go like 50 miles an hour.
There's no match.
I was like, oh my gosh, it got so ridiculous that I fell in love with it. That's when I was like, all right, I'm in. I mean, they pulled out a legitimate like Monster Jam monster truck with the giant 50 inch wheels with a missile launcher on the side. I was like, oh, okay, all right, I'm in.
I kind of feel like they knew that this was going to be like the last big action movie of the decade.
Is that what we were
So
going
they
for?
said, let's go out in style. Let's just blow up every single explosion fire pot in Hollywood.
They were like, hey,
and
guys,
use them all up and
the
just
90s are coming.
blast it.
They're going to start cracking down on us. So we got to do whatever we want now in our time.
It reminded me of like one of those backlot action stuntman set things where they have all the explosions and the boats and the jeeps and everything.
There was something that blew up that it was like, it was such an obnoxious Hollywood explosion effect.
Let me
can't
tell you my
remember what it was,
favorite
though.
part of the movie, though,
What's up?
was that Jack Palance's headquarters was rigged with a voice-activated self-destruction countdown that blew up the
forgot about
entire
that.
place.
How about those
It was
mics,
fantastic.
Just to go off of that, one of my favorite aspects of this movie is, and I turned to Jude when we were watching it and said, like, I need a supervillain lair as good as this guy's, because his bad guy hideout,
Oh my God.
was the quintessential bad guy hideout, complete with a hall of mirrors,
mirrors.
that he could hold a hostage in and confuse the main characters in the climax of the movie.
I always go to Conan the Destroyer, where they were going to the castle and there's the Hall of Mirrors. And
But there was a great climax at the end where they finally are facing off with Jack Pound's character, and he's in the Hall of Mirrors, and
He's holding Tango's sister, right?
and both Tango and Cash figure out where he actually is in two different ways. And after they kill him, they kind of compare notes. And it's like, how did you know?
It's like, his badge was on the wrong side of his jacket. That's how I knew it was the mirror. And then the other guy's like, I saw his ring. His ring was backwards. It's so ridiculous.
And the entire time, Tango and Cash are having this like rivalry of like how one of them owes the other one for saving their life, and so like they keep going back and forth.
He's like, when can I date your sister?
And that was another great aspect of it, where Cash basically has this little romance with Tango's sister, played by Terry Hatcher, and Tango's like the quintessential overprotective brother, and he doesn't want her dating a cop.
His reason was legit.
Yeah,
though.
and so like they have like a nice little like kind of like rivalry in addition to their normal business rivalry over Terry Hatcher's character, and it added a lot of really interesting dynamics to the movie.
I just remembered the ending, like right before it cut to credits. This movie ends with an epic high five.
Yes, yeah, freeze frame, high five. Like cut to music.
yes, perfect.
Like I literally told Jude, I was like, every movie should end like that.
If we ever start doing video, that's how we should end every episode.
It's a slow motion.
Yeah,
We have to jump up and do it in the air.
I 100% agree.
It was a phenomenal way to end that movie.
Everyone start practicing.
A bygone art. A bygone art.
And it was one of those things where basically, like, after all the bull crap of the story, it gets reset. Like, they get accepted back into the police department.
Everything's like normal.
Everything's back to normal.
They didn't just escape from a federal prison.
Yeah.
They didn't kill anybody.
Yeah,
Like, sorry, we arrested you for a murder. You did.
yeah. They were never convicted.
Here's a key to the city.
All right. That's anybody have any final thoughts?
You're welcome, by the way.
Yeah, thank you
for recommending this movie.
Go watch it. It was great.
It was pretty good.
Well, it was okay. But it was definitely.
What would
watchable.
Jeremy John say? If you're drunk, it's a party, or what is his saying? I can't remember. Now it's a party. This is a good movie if you're drunk. Yeah, this is that movie. Jude.
Yes.
Talk to me about the Night of the Comet.
1984, Night of the Comet. So Halley's Comet comes to Earth, and it hasn't been back. This particular comet hasn't been back since the dinosaurs virtually overnight were extinct. So Halley's Comet comes, and if you were exposed to it, it turns you into dust. If you were partially exposed to it, it turns you into a comet zombie. But if you were inside a steel enclosure, you were safe from it. So about, 20 people
in the entire
survive.
City. Yeah.
This is based in LA, and two teenagers are the two main characters of this movie, and
they're sisters, right?
They're sisters, and their father is a Green Beret, so he taught them how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, some nice character development there.
Yes, yeah. I thought so too. And they're like a couple of typical teenage gals in the 80s in 1984, but they're also not typical in the way that they were raised. And they were raised to, basically their dad didn't know how to raise girls. So he raised them like he would a couple of boys in the 80s. So he taught them how to shoot guns and how to fight. And when they come in contact with these zombies, the zombies don't got a chance because they're coming out on top. And also they're going to walk out in a fresh new outfit.
Absolutely. Yeah. The mall scene is by far the greatest.
It's Kadish's favorite too.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And a couple of, a group of scientists were survivors also, but they were partially exposed. So they are on the hunt for survivors who were not exposed so that they can make a serum out of their blood.
Yeah.
The blood.
It's all about the blood.
In order to siphon it out of them and into themselves so that they can survive the comet.
So tell me, what is it about this movie that you love so much, and why did you pick it for this retro?
Honestly, this is one of those things that I think about from my childhood. And I remember when my older sister went to see this in the theater, and I just idolized my sister. She's 7 years older than me, so everything that she did was cooler than me and older than me, and I wanted to do everything that she did. And I remember the day that she came home from the movies, from having seen this movie, and she talked about it, and I was like, that sounds like the coolest movie ever. And I couldn't wait to go see it. And once I was an adult and I finally saw it, I think I just was transported back to that 11-year-old girl who was idolizing her sister talking about this really cool 80s flick.
These two badass chicks
with
their hair
I
and
feel
their
like I still feel like that whenever I watch it. And it's a ridiculous movie.
I could totally
see
that.
It doesn't make any kind of sense, but I love this genre of bad 80s movies.
Yeah. And it was really light on the zombies. I was expecting like a full-blown zombie movie, but it's really not
They were not the main character. This was a female-led movie.
Yes.
Yeah, most of the zombies were in dream sequences too, right?
Yeah. Especially the ones on the actual poster for the movie, the cop zombie. That's just a dream. It wasn't even real. There was like 2 actual zombies in the film, and then a couple.
Come here.
And then, a couple of people that were becoming zombies up towards the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie was very much about like a sisterhood type, like let's build a relationship and help each other out. But,
let's figure out how to live post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it was.
You know what's funny is I'm always kind of curious as to Jude's taste in movies, and I don't like this movie, and I've always wondered what her fascination with it was. And an interesting fun factoid is that when Joss Whedon was a kid, he loved this movie, and the idea of Valley Girls fighting monsters was his inspiration for creating Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Which is another thing that Jude absolutely loves. So I'm like, now it makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Now this makes sense why she likes this movie.
That's a cool little thread.
I read that on Wikipedia today.
This is the type of stuff that Kadish needs to write. He needs to write little factoids.
You guys know how much I love Buffy. I'm always talking about the Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast that I listen to.
At some point in time, you're going to make me watch that show. I can just tell.
You've never seen that movie?
No.
Ooh, are we going to do a series podcast? I get to make you watch a series?
I don't know.
Vader, did you also read about the original title for the movie?
I don't remember.
So the original title for Night of the Comet was a title that I thought would have been much better. and it was called Teenage Comet Zombies.
Yeah,
did not
that would have been better.
And the director wanted to treat the movie more seriously, so he changed it to Night of the Comet.
One of the characters, Samantha, when she is DJing, she says, "To all you teenage comet zombies."
Yeah. That was a good line. That was like, I felt like.
The legal drinking age is now 10.
And now
You
10.
will
That's the
need
best
ID,
part of the
let's be
movie.
real.
Best part of the movie is when she takes her clothes off for no reason whatsoever.
Oh, yeah, in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And it
she's
turns out
down-
it's a dream.
She just starts getting undressed.
Like, I'm going, that is quintessential 80s right
Yes,
there.
yes.
Yeah.
Gratuitous.
There must
not
be.
nude scene, but might as well be.
what about
Listen, if we're gonna watch a movie with a couple of chicks running around for 2 hours, one of them
gotta
better
get
have her
naked.
top off.
And then then you find out that she's supposed to be 16, and you're like, kind of feel a little dirty.
Oh,
She
thanks
was
for bringing
actually
that up.
18 when she filmed this.
well, I hope so.
Well, the funny part was when she was with that guy in the steel-lined projection booth.
Oh my
That
god.
was his older sister, Reggie.
And she
Yeah.
schools him in Superman powers.
Yes.
And she's
No,
like,
silly. He can see through steel just like anything.
Yeah.
no.
I
She
love
doesn't call him
what-
silly. She's like, Superman
nerd.
can't see through steel, you nerd. Like she didn't just out nerd him.
I loved what a nerd Reggie was. Like she's
Yeah.
she's playing video games, and like
Yes.
somebody else had scored
Oh, and
Yeah.
on the game that she was like
sixth place, too.
every single place was hers.
Did we ever find out who that was?
Yes.
Yes, at the end.
Oh, we did?
The
Yeah,
kid
at
who
the
picks
very
up the
end.
little sister.
Really?
Yeah, his
send
license
you-
plate was DMK.
Yeah.
I did not
Which,
notice
if you
that.
haven't watched the movie since between 1984 and now, we just spoiled
Spoiler
it.
alert.
Jude, who was the main actress?
Catherine Mary Stewart.
Yeah, so originally Heather Landenkamp was going to be playing the part of Nancy, and
from
she
Nightmare
was
on
the
Elm
main
Street.
character in Nightmare on Elm
Nancy.
Street.
She also was the love interest in The Last Starfighter,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
which was made that same year. And I was like, I know who this chick is.
I
And
should've
also
picked
in
that
Weekend at
movie.
Bernie's.
Yeah. Weekend at Bernie's.
I definitely should have picked that movie instead. Last Starfighter is awesome.
Oh, I love that movie.
Me too.
I can't believe I had never seen this movie because it came out in 1984 and we had this awesome drive-in where I
Oh, this is
grew up.
perfect for a drive.
That
Yeah.
we all used to go and watch these really bad 80s movies at. And I don't know
Somehow
if I
missed
watched
it.
this movie. I might have seen it already back then. I don't remember seeing it.
84.
But yeah, I was 14.
Oh.
So it was the perfect.
Yeah.
You know what's
The
really
perfect
interesting
thing for me,
about this
so-
movie is that it was a huge hit. It was a movie that was made for like $700,000, ended up grossing like over $14 million in its
Yeah.
box office. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Holy
and the
cow.
director actually he wanted
They
to.
marketed it really well. I remember being a kid and being like, I want to see this. My mom was like, you're not going to go see that.
The director actually wanted to make a sequel, and he also wanted to turn it into a TV show and an animated series.
Oh my gosh.
And he kept getting blocked by the producers because of rights issues that they ran into. And so like he was just like, well, I want to do all this stuff with this concept, but fuck it.
I was surprisingly pleased with this movie. I really was. I've
glad.
never even heard of it before. But I mean, when Chakotay from Star Trek Voyager showed up, I was like, holy cow.
Yeah, he's the main lead.
Yeah, he's the main like love
Male
interest
lead.
male lead. And
Wearing a
I'm
cowboy hat.
Wearing a cowboy hat. Oh my god, it was so
Santa
funny.
Claus suit.
He goes back home and he's fighting some like 9-year-old kid
Oh,
in
that
his
was great.
living room. Some 9-year-old kid is like is a partial zombie, a comet zombie, and Chakotay goes back to his house to try and see if his parents are still alive. And that's
Poor Robert Beltran. Like, oh, Chakotay. He could be in any movie and you just call him Chakotay.
absolutely
Pretty much. That's him.
And
Didn't that kind of like piss him off and like for real? In the
What, being
Star
called
Trek world?
Chakotay?
Because people call him Chakotay
Might
everywhere.
have been. He checked out of Voyager like early
Yeah.
on.
he's coming back though. I saw him in an interview the other day, a recent interview. He was all buddy with his old crew, so maybe he's getting over it.
All right.
I don't know. That's all I know him from. Like I grew
Yeah.
up with him as Commander Chakotay. I had no idea he was in this movie. It was a complete surprise to me when he shows up
He's
at the
very young in it.
at the radio station. Yeah, he was very young. And I was like, I know him. I paused it and I went and got my wife. I'm like, babe, look, who's that? She's like, yeah, so? And I'm like, he's in a movie.
I'm so glad you liked this because I feel like I'm
did.
the only person on the
I mean, it
planet
was
who does.
ridiculous. And it was over the top
absolutely.
80s, but it's perfect.
And I love the part where he like his character gets introduced and he's like, get into the light. And she's like, you get a lot of dates this way. And he's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And he calls her sweetheart. He's like, look, sweetheart, haven't you seen them things running around?
Thanks. Yeah.
And the sister's like, yeah, Jump fire.
Can we talk about
The banter in this movie is on point.
So good.
can we talk about the
Terrible
mall
scientists?
gang?
Oh, okay.
The gang that just roams the mall looking
Yes.
for the only women left alive so they can
Did you
torture and
see
murder
the
them.
monogrammed bathrobe, Willie? I was like, where did he get that? He was just a stock boy
It's
days
like some
ago.
creepy
Did he
nerd guy.
monogram that himself? He had to have.
He was like, I've been waiting for this my whole life.
Yeah, they have a seamstress in the back of the mall. He made her do it, and then he shot her in the head.
Yeah.
That's my...
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and they have
that's
an
my
arm.
take on it.
Apparently, they have an armory in there too.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
What's up?
Where did everybody get all these Uzis?
Well, Daddy
was
would have
the
gotten
80s.
us Uzis.
Addie had it. Yeah, where did they get their Uzis from?
I think they found it.
At their house?
Maybe.
I mean, I know in the 80s, everybody had a couple Uzis in the closet, but
Well, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. If you were cool, you
had
Yeah,
an Uzi.
80s was
Mac
the
10.
decade of the Uzis.
you would go
Mac 10.
Yeah,
The
you would
girls
go
had Mac 10s
skiing.
because they couldn't find an Uzi. Because
And-
it was so
yeah.
funny when they were talking about the guns and it didn't work right. It was like broken or something. And they were like, man, if this was an Uzi, it'd be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. She was like, Daddy would have gotten us Uzis.
Yeah, and we just got these lame Mac 10s.
They're like, the car doesn't seem to care after they like shot it up.
Yeah.
it
They were
blows.
just like shooting up a car for fun.
no
they were like,
reason.
it's the apocalypse. What else are we going to do?
Yeah.
that's what I would have
We got to wait for
It's good
Hector to
target
come
practice.
back from San Diego. So let's just go shoot up some cars.
Vader, what did you think about this movie?
It was all right.
Did it bring you back to the days?
I like the big hair
Yeah.
and the shoulder pads.
Shoulder pads.
The outfits were great.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it reminded me of 1984, just like you were saying, man.
That scene where
That was
they're
my,
trying on all the clothes to the Cyndi Lauper's "Girls Just Want to Have
Yeah.
Fun" song.
Oh,
Which
yes.
was not actually Cyndi Lauper singing because I
Yeah,
bet
it was
they
a
couldn't
different
get the
version.
rights.
Yeah, it was a way different version.
If I pulled out my freshman year of high school annual, every single girl in the picture would look exactly like the two girls in the movie.
They wish.
No, I'm not joking. Same haircut for every single one of
Yeah.
them. It was great.
No sideways ponytail though.
No,
It's like Napoleon Dynamite.
it took me back in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
For being made in 1984, I thought you could tell it was made on the cheap. I think.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that was fine.
Limited sets, but
Thing is, this movie came out a week after Nightmare on Elm Street, which was like a huge phenomenon.
Yeah.
So it kind of got lost in the shuffle,
sure.
I think. But it's got its own little charm.
yeah, it does definitely has some 80s charm to it.
I can.
Don't pretend like you like it now just because your friends do.
Yeah, didn't you start out by saying you
Yeah, he
hated
was
it?
like, I don't
still
like
don't
this
like it.
movie. And he was like, oh, Alex and Vader
It's
liked
got-
it.
it's got its charm,
it's
but-
charming.
I can see why it has gotten that cult status for a a movie.
Has it?
Yeah.
I don't think it has. I think
think
I'm the
it
only one who
has.
likes it.
I've
No, you're
never
not.
heard of this movie
You're absolutely
before.
not.
All right. Any final thoughts on Night of the Comet?
Good
No?
movie. It was
Okay.
all right.
I feel like any movie named Night of the... I don't care what's after that. I'm going to watch it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Night of the Comet.
Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Demon. That movie's also awful. And I love it.
Are you gonna make us watch it?
Probably at some
Eventually.
point.
In August.
When we do a themed podcast about demon movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Come August, you guys are watching every terrible movie.
I'm vetoing that right now.
Freaking Halloween episodes. God, I'm not looking forward to that. All right. MattVader, why don't you tell us about the movie you picked?
I picked John Carpenter's Escape from New York, starring Kurt Russell and a bunch of other guys.
Lee
Very
Van Cleef.
famous
Lee Van Cleef.
Ernest Borgnine.
Yeah, you know, it's 1988 comes around and everybody goes crazy, I guess, because the crime rate shoots up to
Guess who
90%.
Guess who was
400%
born in
over
1988?
Oh, you sweet summer child.
Yep.
So in 1988,
You're
the
so
crime rate
pretty.
goes up 400% across the nation. So they decide to turn Manhattan Island in New York City into a national prison. They build a giant wall around it. And if you're a criminal, you get thrown in there and that's it. The rule is once you go in, you don't come out. And then, so of course, we fast forward to 1997, the great year of 1997,
The future.
the future, which always is kind of keeping me out because we're living into all these future movies. And a terrorist hijacks the president's plane, Air Force One. That's correct, yes. And crash landed in New York City on purpose. Along comes Snake Plissken, who was going to jail because he has been captured for robbing the Federal Reserve or something, if I remember correctly. And he's a ex-Marine or something, special forces guy. And they say, hey, I need you to go in and rescue the president, and we'll give you a pardon. And that sets up the movie, except for they put a thing in his neck
to force him to do
to force him to go, and it's going to blow his head off in 22 hours if he doesn't finish the mission. Because there's a time frame with what the president was doing with this meeting with the Russians and
Chinese
and stuff. So,
wow. Man, how poignant is that?
Yeah,
yeah, build the wall,
and that's that's the plot.
That's the setup for the plot. So what do you love so much about this movie? Why'd you pick it?
I picked it because I was just wanting some nostalgia. That movie, nice dystopian future kind of movie, and I kind of like those things. And it was hitting the old retro button for me because we were talking about these movies a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
and I just wanted to see it, and I did. It was great. I loved it, and it hit all those buttons. So, it was made in 1981, so it was right in there with the whole Empire Strikes Back kind of vibe, and those movies back then were kind of interesting to watch because they were like right on the cusp of a new kind of filmmaking, as far as I'm concerned, with the special effects and all this kind of stuff, and it was just interesting. I liked how it went.
I have a confession to make. I had never seen this movie before.
I had neither.
I knew of it. I knew the plot because the plot's been recycled a million times. Everybody rips off Escape from New York.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm Kurt Russell. It's one of his most known characters that he's ever played. Thank you. One of his most iconic characters that he's ever played. The man was speaking. he always uses better words than I do.
I have the best words.
He's got the best words.
All the good thoughts come from Kadish.
Yes. Kadish needs to tell me what to think. Anyway, so I was really excited to actually sit down and watch it from start to finish. And I mean, obviously I've seen clips on YouTube and whatnot, and I have an idea of what it was about, but I never really got to sit down and just watch Escape from New York. And I got to do it. And I was like, this is, you can't change it. It's perfect. Mm-hmm. It is exactly what it needs to be, and I loved every minute of it. I didn't even think it was overly cheesy. Like, there's some definite 80s cheese to it, but as far as in the movie, it takes itself seriously enough that you're like, okay, no, this is really happening. I think the thing that almost had me on the cusp of this is ridiculous was the Duke from New York. And he was driving around in his with a chandelier duct taped to the front. Yeah. I'm like, why?
I kept trying to get Kadish on board with us putting chandeliers on our cars.
Where did that future go? I want chandeliers on my car.
I thought it was kind
of disco balls.
That's how you know you've made it.
Exactly. You're the Duke.
Shaft driving around with chandeliers on his front of his car.
Yeah, exactly. It was that was the one thing I was like, wow, that's some dated dystopian future stuff.
Well, Alex, you want to have your mind blown?
Go for it.
There's actually a very strong connection of Escape from New York with Jurassic Park.
What? Oh my God, you're going to kill him.
I know. The cinematographer for Escape from New York, Dean Cundey, was the same cinematographer Steven Spielberg used for Jurassic Park. And he also did movies like the Back to the Future movies and Roadhouse and The Thing and Apollo 13. So very well-respected cinematographer. In fact, he used special lenses that had never been used before on the cameras that allowed them to shoot in super low light because the entire movie takes place at night.
It's very dark, yeah.
So the way he lit it was very minimalist, but because of the new lenses that he was kind of pioneering for the shoot, they were able to get some really fantastic shots at night. And funny enough, Escape from New York is not shot in New York at all. No. It's shot in St. Louis. St. Louis, in a burned out area of the city.
Well, they needed something that looked shitty.
Yeah, and John Carpenter.
No, that's
100% true.
They sent their scouting locations across the country. Said, find us a city that looks like it's been destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they found this area of
St. Louis in its heyday.
Yeah.
And they actually bought a bridge.
They didn't go to Detroit.
They bought a bridge in St. Louis for $1.
Yep.
And that's where they shot the final scene. And then they sold it back to the city for $1 after they were done filming.
You know why though? It was funny because the city didn't want to be liable for any accidents that would happen.
Oh, is that why they did that?
So they sold it to the company and then bought it back. Wow. After the movie was over.
That's some shady business right there. I like that. That bridge scene was when the IED, the explosive on the ground, blew the cab in perfect half, and it just the front end kept driving and the back end stopped. I was like, wow. Yeah. I guess that's how physics work.
That was sad.
You can't make that shit up.
No.
You know what's interesting though is that the studio. So, John Carpenter, kind of his best movies have Kurt Russell in them. But at the time, they'd only worked together once before, and that was on like the TV movie Elvis. And at the time, Kurt Russell was trying to break out of his Disney mold because he was like, a big Disney star growing up. And so he was trying to do like more edgy roles to kind of, expand his ability to get cast in other stuff.
Mission accomplished.
And the studio wanted Tommy Lee Jones as Snake Plissken. And John Carpenter was like, no, I want Kurt Russell. And then they were like, okay, if you don't want Tommy Lee Jones, how about Charles Bronson? And Carpenter was like, no, I want Kurt Russell. And they kept going back with him and saying like, okay, you don't want Charles Bronson, but what about this guy? What about this guy? And he's like, God damn it, I want Kurt Russell. And so finally they let Kurt Russell take the role. And it was really interesting because Kurt Russell based his performance on Clint Eastwood's The Man with No Name, the spaghetti Western character. And Lee Van Cleef, who plays the warden, was in all those like Eastwood spaghetti westerns. So like it was just kind of trippy seeing Russell like do his Clint Eastwood impression against Lee Van Cleef. So Kurt Russell also, he was the one who gave Snake the eye patch, and he didn't tell John Carpenter he was going to do it till like he showed up on set
with an eye patch
on. And Carpenter was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it works.
Let's go with it.
I thought the little character moment where he was the warden or whatever that guy's the job was, I don't remember, but
he was a warden.
Was he a warden?
Yeah.
He was like, your name's. He kept calling him Pliskin, Pliskin, and
Call
the guy's
me
like,
Snake.
call me Snake. My name's Snake, and I'm like, oh my.
That's what his mother named him.
Yeah,
you will call him by that.
And then the character growth at the end is very much like he's like, all right, Snake, whatever you say, and he's like, call me Pliskin. I'm like, wow, what an arc.
180.
Oh man!
And it was funny because like the running gag in the movie is, so Snake Plissken's so legendary because he's like this big World War III war hero, and like all these scumbags have had run-ins with him in the past, and everyone, whenever they see him, they're like, Snake, I thought you were dead. And it's just like this running gag throughout the movie where everyone who meets him is like, oh, I thought you were dead already.
Yeah, it's like everybody in the prison knows who Snake Plissken is.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Great.
I had never seen this movie before, and the whole time, every single time he meets a new character, they're like, "Oh shit, you're Snake Plissken," and I was like, "How does everyone in this walled-in jail know who he is?"
It's got to be like a.
Kadish was like, "Well, he's that big of a deal.
He's Snake Plissken.
He's kind of a big deal.
It's like a Chris Kyle thing. Like everybody kind of knows the name of Chris Kyle.
No, it's more like Osama bin Laden. It's just like he's infamous in this world.
Okay, infamous.
Yeah, infamous. Like he's the outlaw. He's like the quintessential outlaw in this world.
Okay, I was going for the war hero thing, but that makes sense.
Well, he was.
Yeah,
something
that
like
makes
that.
sense, and that's why everybody thought he was dead, because if he's that much of an outlaw, he should have already been in there.
Either that or, talk about world building. Like one of the great things about Escape from New York is that they create this interesting world, and it's kind of expanded upon in Escape from LA later on. But like there's all this.
Love that movie.
Getting into sequels? I've never seen the sequel.
There's all this
I saw
stuff.
the sequel first.
Really?
So that's why I think I wasn't really that interested in seeing Escape from New York, because I was like, oh, Escape from LA. I kind of already saw it. Meh.
But there's this whole thing about Kansas City in both movies where like some stuff went down in Kansas City involving Snake, and they keep referring to it, but they never really tell you what it is.
All right, I want a spin-off movie.
Well, yeah, like I think there was actually a comic book that did like Escape from Kansas City, where they kind of expanded upon like what happened there. I'm not really sure on that, but I know that after Escape from LA came out, they were talking about doing a third movie and creating a trilogy and calling it Escape from Earth, where basically Snake just gets so fed up that he just like gets off the planet.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
I
please.
would watch that for sure.
But this is an interesting action movie because there's not like a whole lot of action in it. It's very slow paced.
It is, yeah.
Kind of film, and it can be boring in parts because there's not a lot of dialogue. Like Snake's character in particular, he doesn't talk a whole lot. But
Just sneaking around the city by himself.
it's one of those movies where like I feel like when I'm watching it, I'm just kind of like going along for the ride and I'm not really entertained. But then when I think about it and I talk about it, like it becomes so much better, it's one of those movies that it lives on in your mind long after you finish watching it.
Yeah.
And every character in the movie is kind of a caricature, but it works. Like, they have the Duke of New York, and they have like, the cabbie and like these different like over the top characters.
Oh, who was the cabbie? The cabbie's a
Ernest Borgnine.
Yeah, he's a famous dude too.
Yeah. Totally, not necessary for the film. I think they just wanted to cast Ernest Borgnine in something like, let's make a role for him. But, like I'm a huge John Carpenter fan, and this was like on his upswing right after Halloween, where he was starting to make like these like phenomenal movies like, Big Trouble and The Thing and stuff like that, all involving Kurt Russell. And you can kind of see like elements of Escape from, or Assault on Precinct 13 in this, with like in fact, I think the same gang member with like the crazy hair is in both movies. And John Carpenter, like during this time period, he just had this really bleak outlook on life. Like he was just like super cynical, and he wrote this movie after visiting New York and being like, this place is a crap hole, but everything about this movie, just as a film geek, appeals to me.
Yeah,
it's just a fun, interesting science fiction dystopian movie. And one of the great things about Carpenter is like, at least in his early days, he was very kind of almost like George Lucas in the sense that he was very pioneering in different film techniques. So we talked about the low light stuff, but if you know a thing or two about the special effects in this movie, so that all the computer grid stuff that's in the movie, it looks like, an Atari based like grid system where they're going
flying in.
Yeah. None of that was computer generated, because the computers at the time just didn't have the ability to do that. So they actually built models that had like reflective tape on them, and that they moved cameras through, and then they color corrected it and made it look like a computer generated image. Like, it was freaking crazy.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Jude, have you talked about it yet? What did you think about this movie? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you just don't care? What's it?
I had never seen it before. I'm glad that I saw it. I don't need to see it again.
Yeah, when the movie was over, she was like, that was stupid.
Nobody's gonna watch my movie either.
Well, it's because your movie was terrible. This one was good.
It was silly. So. I don't think I said it was stupid. I do drink a lot at night, though. But it was silly. I'm glad that I saw it. It was better than Escape from LA.
Way better.
Way better. It's I think Vader nailed it with the nostalgia of the 80s. I'm glad that I saw it.
That synthetic score from John Carpenter really helps set the tone for the movie.
I think when you think of quintessential must-watch action movies of the 80s, Escape from New York needs to be on that list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a class. Like, I call it a classic, not just a cult classic, because it's really
not just a classic. It's a class act.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, everyone from the 80s knows that movie.
Yep.
And loves it. And I feel like the older I get, the better the movie gets. Oh, fun fact though, James Cameron did all the matte paintings for
that's true.
Escape from New York.
He painted them himself?
Yeah, he was the matte painting artist in the special effects crew.
This is James Cameron.
Before he got his big break. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And as long as we're still talking about the 80s, I couldn't help but notice the main love interest in Escape from New York was also the main love interest in Swamp Thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen Swamp
Thing.
And
I think those are the only two movies she ever made.
Adrienne Barbeau, right?
Yeah. I was just saying, like, there were so many actors in this movie that, like for instance, Jamie Lee Curtis, she was the voice in the prison that you'd hear over the loudspeakers, but like she wasn't actually credited with that. She just did it as a favor to John Carpenter because they did Halloween together. But that was her voice. So like there are a lot of like cool little like cameos like, in this movie from recognizable actors from the 80s that I thought were really spectacular.
It's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. It's really cheesy. All these movies are cheesy. Mine's just terrible, but your guys' all are cheesy.
Yeah, we all based ours in the 80s, and you were like, I'm going to mess you guys up.
We're going to throw a wrench in this plan.
We were like, that's not what we meant.
How did you choose Angry Red Planet?
I told you already. I was just searching through, and I was looking. I'm like, if we're doing like retro, I want to go like way, way back. I want to go to something that like nobody remembers.
I like how all of our movies were like, let's pick something from the 80s, and you were like, let's go retro. Like
80s is retro. Are you
80s
kidding
is
me?
retro.
There's a
60s is ancient.
Ancient.
That's
Antique.
Stone
old.
Age.
It's an antique.
That's classic.
Classic.
Classic. This wasn't a classic though. All right, some fan call-ins, or not call-ins, but comments about their favorite retro movies. Calmy13 said Charade and How to Catch a Thief, and also
What years?
Guys and Dolls. Those are all in the 60s, I think. Those
Guys
are
and Dolls.
those are like Humphrey Bogart
Musical.
and.
No, I know what it is. I'm just saying. I think that was 50s.
Maybe black and white.
Yeah,
Probably.
that's not retro to me.
That's not. How is that not
Yeah,
retro?
that's old.
That's just old fart movies.
Turner Classic Movies. How dare you, sir?
Well, yeah, Turner Classic
I don't
Movies.
think I've ever seen the movie Guys and Dolls, but I did see the play.
I have.
Then you've
I've
seen the
it.
movie.
I've seen the
Pretty
movie.
much the same thing.
Luck
Just
be a
saying.
lady tonight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had one.
Hey,
had,
Dollface.
I have
Why don't you-
culture.
Why don't you show us your
Maybe
films and
that's why
careers?
I'm like I lean towards those older movies because I've seen all those ones. I haven't seen the 80s movies as much. Maybe I don't know.
You were born in the year I graduated from high school.
You were born with an asshole, Doris. You don't need Chuck.
Another comment from Lime Chili 777 said The Jackal, Cliffhanger, and Soldier. The Soldier. Is that what it's called? With Kurt Russell?
With Kurt Russell.
Yeah, the
No,
Soldier.
it's just Soldier.
Just Soldier.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a pretty cool movie.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
I don't either.
Kurt Russell broke his hand in that movie.
Ooh.
Had to do it with a broken
Fun
hand.
trivia. Broken hands.
Did he also break the movies?
That was the movie
think-
where he was the super soldier
Yeah.
that got sent to the other planet, the garbage planet or whatever.
The prison planet, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty
And
cool.
then he had to fight his former brothers in arms.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
It wasn't. It was a terrible movie.
I think
The Jackal was also pretty bad too, with Bruce
it?
Willis. Yeah,
I think Cliffhanger's
Jackal's
probably
not good.
Cliffhanger's up there for one of my favorite
yeah.
Stallone
It's a good
movies, though.
Stallone flick.
Still, yeah.
You know they're remaking it with a female lead.
Oh, of course they are.
Yeah,
We're going to have to talk about this.
Is it like Ronda Rousey or somebody?
probably. I don't know.
I'm not
Rousey.
watching it.
What if it's Gina Carano?
I don't care.
All right, let's do some fan questions. We've
Okay.
got one from Nick Sheffer, Patreon of the podcast. He says,
Nick.
"What is it about classic sci-fi and TV in general from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that, despite being more campy and possible worse effects, makes it more reachable than stuff from the 90s and early 2000s? Do you agree, or do you find this to be biased or not true?"
Well, you know the big difference here is that the early sci-fi that he's referring to was actually written by actual science fiction like novelists, like people that Hollywood recruited from, publishing to write this stuff that, ends up being like kind of like classic and, stands the test of time. Nowadays, it's just like your brother, sister's cousin's roommate like wrote a script, so we're going to punch it out there. So it really comes down to the talent of the writing behind it. I mean, and plus during that era, like there weren't these science fiction ideas weren't as fully explored as they are now. So there was a lot of nostalgia factor as well, where that sense of wonder and seeing something for the first time and being interested in it. I think it kind of colors people's perception of those
Yeah,
earlier
I definitely think people look
things.
back with rose-colored glasses with these movies. And the other thing, too, I think the limited technology of those days kind of forced the people to be more creative and take the extra step. Whereas today, you have a director who's like, "Oh, I have this idea. I don't know exactly how to make it work. I'll just send it to the computer guys, and they'll digitally put something in there, and we'll fix it in post." Like it's not. You couldn't have done that back then. You had to have had everything planned out and everything ready to go, and film it physically.
Like the whole practical effects thing. Like I don't know if you knew this or not, but so for Escape from New York, they had to build an actual miniature set of New York. And use
It looks
that,
like a miniature set when they're
and
flying
use
over.
that for like the aerial shots and all the compositing and stuff. But they actually took that set and reused it for Blade Runner, where they like redressed it as like this futuristic, city. And it was just a different era where something about those practical effects made it feel more real.
Yeah,
Because it was real.
Yeah.
because it was. Yeah, exactly.
Well, than the CG stuff that we have now.
I agree. Jude, what do you think about this? What is it about these old 80s movies that makes you connect with them more than the modern ones? Like if there was a modern zombie movie, would you be as enthusiastic about it?
I don't I think I've never thought from Kadish's perspective, but everything that he said kind of made sense to me. Like, everything about when they're creating these like new blockbusters now, it seems just kind of lazy in the creation of it. And I too get very frustrated with like bad writing and lazy writing. But I don't know. There's just something about, for me personally, the genre of like the late 70s and 80s. It's just, it harkens back to like stuff that I used to watch when it would air on television when I was a kid. Like, and it's just the nostalgia of it. I like it. And like, I used to grow up watching those like terribly campy USA Up All Night movies with like Gilbert Gottfried and Rhonda Shear. And I lived for those and loved them. And I still have a very nostalgic place in my heart for anything that's like very campy and from the 80s. I'll at least give it a go.
Yeah. Vader, what about you? Do you think modern movies are worse than the old ones, or is it just a perspective thing?
I don't think they're worse. I just think they're made different now. You know, I look at 80s movies like we watched this week, and they're just pure nostalgia for me. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I also think about movies like Night of the Comet, for instance. You know, it was made in 1984, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, that's 7-8 years after Star Wars came out. So I have a hard time with movies like that because I'm going to compare it to something that drove my inner nerd crazy for my whole life, and it doesn't even compare. You know, and I know it's not fair to compare budgets and all that kind of stuff, but you know, there was a lot of movies back then that were good. You know, Indiana Jones came out in 1982, Star Wars came out in 1977. The Star Trek movies, you know, they were capable of making some really good special effects movies back then. So when I see these campy, kind of weird movies, it's an interesting thing.
There's a certain charm to them.
Yeah,
though.
That's really interesting that you say the phrase like "what drove my nerd," because like the things that drove your nerd are the things that you're interested in now.
Yeah.
And that's just interesting. Like, because my perspective is this is what drove my nerd, and this is the things that these are the things that I'm still interested in now. So like, and I'm not interested in
completely fair.
Like the same
Star
things
Wars
that you
and
are.
stuff,
Yeah, like Star Trek and Star Wars.
I like big budget temple movies. I like movies that like make me go out of the theater going, "Holy crap! I can't believe what they pulled off."
Yeah.
You know.
Do you feel like what's the most recent modern movie that made you feel that way? Big tentpole, special effects.
Probably one of the Avengers movies.
Endgame came to mind.
Yeah.
But,
do you like more watching things in the theater, or do you like watching them more from like your couch and streaming?
For these kind of movies, I want the theater experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I want the 60-foot screen. I want the super surround
She's
sound.
like, I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to leave the couch.
Well, we'll talk
you know,
about
I watched,
this later, but
just for example, I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark at the theater last year.
Yeah.
Because they had that special weekend. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, and it's always cool to go back and see those movies the way they're meant to be seen.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, if Night of the Comet came around and see in the theater, I'd probably go watch it now, just to see it,
to have some fun.
Yeah, it would be cool.
There's still a drive-through in Vegas.
There is.
Yeah.
There's one.
I've been.
I've been there.
You mean a drive-in?
Drive-through, whatever.
They're playing
One you
drive-thrus
get
and
beers,
drive-in.
the other one you watch movies and also get beer.
And also, just pack it in the back. All right. The next listener question is from Andre Hutchins. He runs the Backseat Director podcast. You guys can go check him out. He's a pretty cool guy.
I've listened to it. It's good.
He's got the catchiest freaking song.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous. Okay, says, okay, salty nerds, here's my question. Are the 80s action hero genre era or genre completely dead? Will we ever see the likes of Stallone, Schwarzenegger in Hollywood again? The closest thing I can think of is Dwayne Johnson, but not even his movies measure up, in my opinion.
Well, they're all women now.
I don't. I don't think
That's dark.
I don't think the modern politics of Hollywood would allow them to make a movie like the first Predator, for example,
Or Tango and Cash.
or Tango and Cash. They're just, people are so caught up in their stupid politics and their easily offended culture now that they're not allowed to do stuff like that.
Is
you
there
know? I
anything-
mean, listen to how we talked earlier today. It's like, oh, though they made a reference about the astronaut from 1961 and her curves.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, why don't you go make me a sandwich back in the galley? People, they would lose their fucking minds if they did that today.
Yeah.
You know, it would blow up every social media thing in the world.
But then you look at other movies, like, just for instance, Kevin Smith. He's got some raunchy comedy in his stuff. I mean, he's got a male dude just screwing a donkey in one of his movies. And that's not like, oh my God.
That was the 90s, though.
That was the 90s.
Also, Kevin Smith doesn't care.
Yeah. Well,
Kevin Smith is going to make Kevin Smith movies. And if the theaters don't want to run them, he'll take them on a tour himself and show them to people who buy tickets at his shows.
Yeah. Look at someone like...
And I forgot what I was going to say.
Look at someone like Tarantino, who puts in some of the most un-PC stuff imaginable in his movies. And when people try to call him out on it, he's just like, I reject your premise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this this is my movie, and if you don't like it, screw you.
That was a great quote when they were yelling at him for not giving Margot Robbie enough lines in his latest movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, well, how come Margot Robbie didn't have this many lines, but the male characters had this many lines? And he's like, I reject your premise, or whatever he said.
Mm-hmm.
Was in Cannes, right?
Yeah.
So.
But it is interesting because if you look at the action hero genre in the 80s, it's evolved in a very different way in modern times, because 80s was very much about like the blue collar, like action hero, like, you know, the Bruce Willis, Die Hard, the Martin Riggs, Lethal Weapon. And today you've got like Hobbs and Shaw and the Fast and Furious Vin Diesel. And these are, you know, this generation's action heroes. But even to bring that to an even different place is all the comic book superheroes, where they're literal action heroes. And so it's going to be interesting to see, like, when we're old and decrepit, all these youngsters talking about their nostalgic movies.
I think,
you know,
even these modern action heroes, I mean, and The Rock is like the only example I can think of. Even his movies aren't on the same level, I don't think, as some of those old 80s ones, because he's playing cartoon caricatures of himself.
Wait.
You know, like that Hobbs and Shaw, where he's holding a chain with 4 Jeeps on one side and a helicopter on the other.
But Schwarzenegger,
Schwarzenegger
made a career out of doing that exact same thing.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
Not to
Commando?
that extreme.
He was like just unlimited ammo god
That's
mode.
not the same.
I think
it's not even remotely close to the same.
I think it is the same.
I'd have to agree with Alex on this one.
I think it's the same thing.
You guys are wrong. Okay.
So, like, yeah, these old 80s movies, I think it's just our perspective watching these movies. We grew up with them, and I'm younger than you guys, but I still grew up on those same types of movies. I don't remember watching like a 90s action movie as much. Nothing really comes to mind. I remember those. You know,
compare the original Total Recall with the remake.
Oh, it's awful.
People don't watch or even think about the remake. They forget it even exists.
Yeah,
because it's not as good.
Yeah.
But we're talking about, like...
I also think it has to do with the sensibility of the filmmakers who are behind those movies. Like, we talked today about Tango and Cash and how, you know, John Peters and Sylvester Stallone were like big influences on how that movie turned out. And, you know, those were the guys who, like, their egos just kind of fueled the movies of the 80s. And you don't have people like that in Hollywood, you know, making these. You have like people like Alex Kurtzman instead, you know, making.
Why'd you have to say his name? Why'd you have to say that
name? He's the perfect example of like a producer who churns out, you know, like poor movies. Yeah. Whereas somehow these crazy people from the 80s actually ended up making good movies. Like, for instance, Rambo 3, as bad as Rambo 3 is, like, you can watch that movie and just be like, yeah, you know, like this is a Rambo movie.
So I think we do have those people. I think guys like Vin Diesel, who may have made 10 Fast and Furious movies. You got
Jason, you know, Bloodshot.
Yeah, Jason Statham. He's done a ton of different movies. The Meg. Oh, that is terrible. Like, if The Meg came out in the 80s, like that would be one of those nostalgic 80s dumb movies.
Yeah, it was called Jaws.
Yeah, Jaws, except bigger and better.
That movie made me upset. Like, I was furious when we came out of the theater.
You know, I haven't seen The Meg yet, and it's only because my daughter wanted to watch it with me, but then she moved, and I've been waiting for her to come visit, and it's been sitting on my DVR for like
Oh, you still have it?
months.
Dude.
No, it's just, and I haven't watched it yet.
I keep saying I need to rewatch it to see if I actually hate it as much as I
You
think I
probably
do.
still hated it.
I know
I
will,
enjoyed it.
but
I enjoyed it. I mean, they had Dwight Schrute in there, for Christ's sake. It was freaking hilarious.
He was the best part of the movie.
It was the
I
best
read
part.
all of the Meg books. So when this movie was coming out, like Kadish can attest, I was so beside myself excited for this movie. I got a t-shirt.
You guys don't understand how much Jude loves sharks.
I love them and fear them equal. And when this movie, we went to the movies and we saw this movie, and the whole time I was just like, but the book.
I think if you compare the 80s action stars with the current batch,
Yeah,
the
there's
80s,
no
there's no comparison. There is no comparison. Everybody from Jean-Claude Van Damme to Dolph Lundgren and Stallone and
Well, it is
everybody
funny.
is
Like,
just
if you look at the Expendables movies, where like they tried to merge like the
All the
old-
new action
like,
stars.
the new action
Yeah.
stars with the older ones.
Like, nobody cared about the new ones.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, they were overshadowed by the old,
I mean,
the
you-
old
And
school.
you've got
in
like
the
Chris
80s,
Hemsworth.
Everything was unapologetic, and now
Yeah.
everything is apologetic.
see, and
so
that's
it
the
just doesn't
difference.
mesh.
That's the difference between then and now. Is people didn't care if you got offended watching
Right.
those movies back then.
Yeah.
The thought didn't even
Nowadays-
occur to anyone.
Nowadays, everybody
It'll-
has to make movies
Yeah.
because
It'll affect the box office.
oh, somebody will write some bad shit on Rotten Tomatoes about it or something, and
yeah.
it's just
Nobody wrote reviews in the 80s. There was two guys. They were called Siskel and Ebert.
that's it. You're not wrong. So
It's definitely the culture has changed, but I think I still think that there are action movie stars. Dwayne Johnson is a perfect example.
and they make children's movies like Jumanji.
I like those movies.
I love
those are kids'
Jumanji.
movies.
No, those
So
are
was Jumanji.
Those are legit good movies.
Yeah.
They're still kids'
Jumanji was a
movies.
kids movie. That was a fantastic Robin
Tooth
Williams
Fairy
movie.
was
Can
terrible.
you imagine Jumanji with Stallone and Schwarzenegger?
Yes, it's called Guardians of the
Oh,
Galaxy.
come on. You're out of here.
Zathora.
Guys, Mom, Dad, don't fight.
All right. Do we have any final thoughts for this this epic podcast about the retro rewatch?
Just we're never letting you choose another movie.
That's
again.
very true. Never again.
Yeah. Yeah, you need specific guidelines.
Yes.
Okay, you can only pick a movie from this year to this year.
There you go.
And it has
This
to have,
is what retro means.
Giving you a genre.
it has to have one of these three actors in it:
Yes.
Kurt Russell or Sylvester Stallone,
Yeah.
or both.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Salty Nerd Podcast. We appreciate it. If you guys would like to check out some of our other stuff, you can go to saltynerd.com. It's our brand new website. You can go straight there. You have all of our content and a bunch of other really cool stuff that Mathew Kadish put together for us. So go check that out. You can also go to Salty Nerd Store and check out our merch, stickers, support the podcast over there.
And if they want to be patrons of the show,
They can go to Salty Nerd Club.
crew.
Is it club?
No,
It's
you
club.
were right. It's
Yeah,
club.
it's saltynerdclub.com.
Correct.
Here's the thing. On the website, there's little links on top. Just push one of those that says Patreon on it. It'll take you right to it.
Boom. Simple. Easy. One click away, people. Go check it out. And Matt Kadish, where can they find you on the socials?
They can find me on Twitter at Mathew Kadish, Kadish. And if they want to check out my books, they can go to kadishbooks.com.
Right on. Jude, where can they find you?
You can find me at I am Jude Juju on the socials. And you can find me at the brand new website, saltynerd.com.
Right on. You guys can tweet at her at Jude Juju. I am Jude Juju. And
I am
you
Jude
guys
Juju.
can talk about old nostalgic 80s zombies movies, which Jude loves.
Yeah,
It's fantastic.
They are pretty cool.
I'm
Matt-
pretty cool.
Jude is pretty cool. Matt,
She is pretty
she
cool.
feeds us and gives us alcohol.
That's very true.
That's very true.
Stella Artois.
I live with her and she
Stella
doesn't give me any of that.
Patriarchy is alive and well in this house.
Well, it's funny
Oh,
because
come
when
in, sweetheart. Do you need a sandwich?
when they're not here, I don't get fed or supplied with alcohol at all. So
She's like, come over and watch movies with us and I'll feed you.
Yeah. Kadish, rub my feet. The boys are gone.
MattVader, where can they find you on the socials? And you're doing video game stuff too, right?
A little bit. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Twitch, all at MattVader74. I'm working on building that Twitch membership follow
Right on.
group up.
You need 50, right?
I need 50.
Cool. Get
I'm
this
right,
guy to...
I'm right around 19, 20 right now. It's like, so it's, it's a huge thing. It's
Yes,
a big, huge thing.
it's a big deal. Guys, go help Vader get to his 50 subscribers or followers. What do they call it on Twitch? Is it
What's
followers?
that?
What do they call your followers?
followers.
Just followers? All right, cool. Hey, cue the music. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Where can they check us out on YouTube?
saltynerdvideo.com.
Yeah, so if you like video content, you can check us out there.
Yep,
we are dropping episodes daily.
Yes, video clips cut up into small segments, easily digestible for your viewing pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.